Welcome back to our October breast cancer series. Today, we're honored to have Emma join us. Like Shelby, she was diagnosed with the same type of breast cancer almost a year to the day later. This conversation details about cancer diagnosis and treatment, so this is your trigger warning. Take care of yourself while you listen.
We're going to be sharing Emma's story, her fight, and how our journeys connected us in a whole new way. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Emma.
Well, my name is Emma. I'm 27 years old and I'm married to Lee. This year we've been married for 7 years and we have a daughter, Ella, who is 3, and my son, Walker, he just turned 1 in July.
We're going to talk a little bit later of how Emma and I connected, but I'm going to let her kick it off and tell you her diagnosis story.
So, where to begin on this? I was expecting my son, and and this is bad of me to say, but I had never really done breast exams on myself before. I just was never really made aware. I mean, you hear about it occasionally, but I just was never really made aware to do that. But anyways, I want to say I was probably 30 weeks pregnant. And I was just laying there one night and just kind of I felt probably a dime-sized lump on my breast. Um, I didn't think much about it because I was 26 years old or maybe 25 at the time, I can't remember, and didn't have a history of breast cancer in my family, and my mind just didn't even go there. I thought, "Okay, I'm towards the end of my pregnancy." It kind of felt like a clogged milk duct is what I thought, and just kind of let it go, went to checkup appointment, mentioned it to my doctor, he kind of agreed, "Hormones are crazy right now, and we'll just, let it go." That was pretty much it. And then fast forward to I delivered Walker. And at this point, I would say it had probably grown to about the size of a golf ball or so. So it had gotten bigger, but I had had clogged milk ducts before. And I mentioned it to a lactation person in the hospital. They come in after you have your baby and check in on you and make sure everything's going good. And I just asked, I said, "Is it normal to have a clogged milk duct before the baby is even delivered?" And they just said, I mean, it can happen, but that was pretty much it. And we just kind of went on our way. Fast forward to my 6 week postpartum checkup with my doctor. It had just gotten even bigger, and I mentioned it again to him, and he felt of it, and he told me, he's like, "I really think it's just your hormones. Like, let's give it a little while, let your hormones die down. They're crazy right after you have a baby." And I had had fibrocystic breasts before. Like, after I had Ella, I had actually had to have an ultrasound done because felt something. My doctor wanted to get it checked. And so I didn't think much about it. I'm like, it's probably another cyst, kind of like that. This one's just bigger. Once my hormones die down, it'll just go away. Time rocked on. Walker was about to be 4 months old. And by this point, it had gotten to about the size of a large orange or a softball type. Like, it was big. It took up, I mean, not to be like too graphic or anything, but most of my breast. It was huge. And the slightest nudge or anything, it hurts so bad. And so I finally just I had kind of put it off. Finally called the doctor and was like, "Hey, it's really starting to bother me. It's hurting." And that's the main reason why I called. So they had me come in, and he feels of it in the office that day. And he's like, "Look, I still don't think it's anything. Like, even though as large as it was," he's like, I really don't think it's anything. I just think it's hormones." He's like, "But just for peace of mind," he even told me, he's like, "You might end up having to get it surgically removed because it's causing you so much discomfort." But he still, like, he did not even mention the word cancer or anything like that. And so I was just so naive going into it. They scheduled me the very next day at the breast center in Huntsville. I went to get an ultrasound, and I was still nursing Walker at the time. And I hadn't really left him at this point because he was about to be 4 months old, and I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I'm always with my kids. I never really was away from them. And so I took him with me to my appointment for the ultrasound because he was just going to sit in his car seat, or so I thought. But I get in there and, she's doing the ultrasound and everything. And she steps out of the room for a minute. And in that time, Walker started to get fussy and he wanted to be held. So I got him out, set him in my lap. She came back in and she said, okay, so they want me to rescan you on the right side, is where my tumor was. And they want me to do an ultrasound of your other underarm and breast. And then they want you to go get a mammogram right after this. And still in my head, I mean, looking back, I had no concern whatsoever. I just was in my own little world, I guess, and thought, okay, well, they're just going to see that it's a cyst. Um, had no thought of cancer whatsoever on my mind. And we finished up with ultrasound, and in the breast, I don't know how it was for Shelby, but in the breast center there in Huntsville, they bring you back. You have changing rooms. You change into a white robe with a breast center, or a pink ribbon on it, is what it is. And um, I can't. It took me a long time to be able to go and look back at pictures, but sorry, I'm kind of jumping all around a little bit. But I was sitting there with Walker, waiting on her to come back in the room, and I had taken some pictures of him. And in the background of the picture, I could see the robe and the pink ribbon. And for a while after I found out, it was like PTSD, I guess, in a way. Like I couldn't hardly look at that robe and see all of that. But anyways, all that to say, they took me back to the room for the mammogram. I had Walker, he was awake. And so all the nurses were so excited because they never see babies in there. And they were so sweet. And they held him while I went in there and got a mammogram. Never had a mammogram before, obviously. I was 26 at the time then. It hurt so bad on that side where my tumor was to get that mammogram. I think I was like gritting my teeth almost because it was so painful. Still didn't think anything about it. They took me into another room by myself with Walker, just kind of left me there. And in my head, so silly, but I thought, oh, this is so sweet of them to put me in this room by myself with him because I've got a baby instead of sticking me back out in the waiting room. Like, this is so sweet of them. But in reality, a few minutes later, I think it was 3 or 4 people came in the room. And so that's kind of when the light switch went off of, okay, well, this is not normal. And the radiologist was there with a few of the nurses, and I guess it's like a counselor type person that was there too. And he just told me, basically, he's like, we need to get a biopsy done of this and see what's going on. And when he said that, it's like my stomach just dropped. And it's like, okay, a biopsy. And I asked him, I said, should I be worried? And he said, well, let's not worry until we have something to worry about. And so, your mind just starts going a million miles an hour. And it's like, okay, well, what does this all mean? And they kind of set it up. He was like, you're going to come back first thing Monday morning. So, if to give a little timeline, I went on Thursday to see my OB, had my ultrasound and mammogram. This was on a Friday. And they set me up for first thing Monday morning to come back and get my biopsy done. And so they kind of told me, set all that up for me. And they let me get dressed and everything. And then whenever I was leaving the room, the counselor type person was just kind of waiting there and she walked me out. But before we left the room, I just looked at her and I said, is this something that I should be worried about? And she had this look on her face and she just nodded her head, yes. She didn't say anything to me, and I kind of nodded back at her. I got Walker, and she walked us out the door, and I was all by myself. But as I'm going to my car, I'm trying to call Lee. He didn't answer. He was busy. And I get to the car and I call my mom. I put Walker in, and I lost it. I just started, and all I could say was, it's not good. It's not good. And she was trying to have my dad or my brother to come pick me up because she didn't want me driving. All she could say was, "Okay, well, we're gonna, do it. We're gonna fight this." Like that's all I can remember her saying. Nobody had even said the word cancer to me yet, but when that counselor nodded like that, I knew that it was bad. And that drive, I don't even remember the drive home. I lived probably about 25 minutes from it, but I got home. Well, on the drive home, I called my nanny and poppy, and that's my mom's parents. That's what I call them, is nanny and poppy. And they had been out with some of their friends, and I just called her and I told her the same thing. And when I got home, Lee came out and met me. I had talked to him at that point, and Lee came out and met me in the garage, and I absolutely lost it. I was crying. And normally Lee is we're complete opposites. I worry about every little thing, like obsessively, like I am a worrywart. He is the complete opposite. I can actually get aggravated at him at times because I'm like, you have no concern for anything at all. But that day when he came out to the garage, he was upset. I think we just all kind of knew at that point, that we just all kind of felt that, okay, something's wrong. And we went inside, and my parents came over, my brother came over, my nanny and poppy came over, so everybody was there. I don't remember a whole lot, right after I got home. I think I was just still in shock of, like, everything was fine one second, and I just had a new baby, and life is great, and then all of a sudden, everything is just flipped upside down, and you don't know forward from backwards, you don't know up from down. It's like everything in your entire world has changed. I just remember kind of sitting there in the chair, and it's like you're watching everybody else around you, and it feels like the world has stopped spinning, and it's like everybody's looking at you, but they don't really know what to say. Like nobody knows what to really, you're all in shock, I think. But what I do remember from that night, and it's probably one of the hardest moments, I think, through all of it, and I might start crying at this part, because when it comes to my kids, they're everything to me. But so this was November, whenever all this was happening. I love to decorate for Christmas. Christmas is like my favorite holiday. I always decorate early. And I had gotten a tree to put in Ella's room that year. She hadn't never really had a tree. And we had went and picked out ornaments. I'd let her pick out certain ornaments for her tree. And I had already had plans to come home and put up her tree in her room that year. So I told myself, I was like, I'm gonna do it. Like I need a little bit of a distraction. And even though you're really not distracted. So me and Lee went in there, and Ella went in there with us. And when I tell you, it was like all I could think was, this is gonna be the last Christmas that I have with my kids. And seeing her, I'm like, I'm never gonna get to see her grow up. And I don't know how I did it, but we got the tree decorated, and it looked halfway decent. That moment of like realization of it, like sinking in, like, okay, like, you don't know the unknown of, like, you don't know what's going to happen, is terrifying. And the thought of my kids having to suffer through anything like that just has always been the hardest part for me. And when Shelby says that the mental part of cancer is the worst, it's so true, because I feel like I could deal with anything physical, like any of the pokes and the pricks, the surgeries, the sickness, it doesn't matter. But what you mentally have to battle and go through every day is, it's hard. And it does get better at times, but there are days that are harder than others. But later that night, we had gotten the kids to bed and everything, and Lee came in there, and it's like we just had kind of a quiet moment alone. And I remember him, just nobody had said obviously the word cancer, but I feel like everybody just knew. in a way. I don't know how, but we just all kind of knew that it was not good. He came in there and sat on the bed with me, and he just broke down, and he kept saying that it should be him, that the kids need me more and that it should be him, and just, you're going through this, like, I can't believe this is happening. And I remember, I think it was that next day, the Saturday, my nanny had come back over, and or maybe it was that same night. It really all runs together for me, but she had come over, and she's like my go-to person. We've always been extremely close, and I go to her for everything. And I remember sitting there on the bed with her, and it was just me and her in the bedroom. And I just looked at her and I said, "Nanny, do you think I'm gonna be okay?" And she just broke in front of me, and she said, I can't tell you. She said, "I don't know. I don't know that." She was always the one through my childhood that would tell me, it's gonna be okay. Like, and I wanted to hear that from her so bad. And she couldn't tell me that in the moment. So that Saturday, went to church that night. Don't know how I did it, but got together, and I was like, I'm not just gonna sit here in the house anymore. Like, I need to get out. Went to church that night, went over to some friends' house afterwards. Nobody really knew what was going on at that point. Went to church that Sunday, and then Monday morning comes around, and it's time for my biopsy. And Lee and my nanny go with me. So at the breast center where I go, they have a separate waiting room in the back, um, that you go and you get changed into your robe and everything. And they did let my nanny go back with me. They wouldn't let Lee because he's a man, and there's women just in robes. They let her go back with me to sit there, and I walk in, get up on the table, and the radiologist comes in. They start going over everything. I had an ultrasound guided biopsy like Shelby did, and he just starts talking to me. And I was asking him questions too, but basically he just I I think I might have even asked him, I said, "Do you think it's cancer?" And he basically just told me, yes, that it is cancer. And he told me even that from the way it looked, he thought that it looked like triple negative breast cancer. I had never heard of triple negative breast cancer. I remember just asking him while I was laying there on the table, I said, "Do you think I'll be treatable?" And he was optimistic. I think trying to help me some because obviously he could see how upset I was. And that's all I would say for days is I just want to be treatable. As long as I'm treatable, as long as I can do something, I'll do whatever I have to do. I don't care what it is, but whatever I have to do, I'll do it. I left out of the room, and my nanny was sitting there. It was like she could see me as soon as I walked out the door. And there was other people sitting in the waiting room, but at that point, I didn't even care. I lost it, and I was just nodding my head, and I was like, it is cancer." I don't think I'll ever forget this. And you wonder sometimes what goes on in people's heads and why they say the things that they do. But there was a lady sitting in a chair, right by us, and she just looked at me. I was sitting there, and she said, "Radiation is gonna burn you up." When she said that, it was kind of like I didn't even really comprehend it at the time, I don't think. But looking back now, I'm like, there was no need in that comment whatsoever. Um, because one, radiation did not burn me up, but also I had just been told that it was cancer, and my whole world is falling apart over here. And it's just people don't realize sometimes, I don't think, how insensitive they can be. But anyways, we went out and told Lee that it was cancer. Um, Fast forward, they called me Tuesday. So that was Monday morning. They called me on Tuesday and gave me the results over the phone. Obviously knew it was cancer at that point, but they told me, okay, it is triple negative. they wouldn't give me any staging or anything. The only thing they told me was that it was grade 3, which meaning it's really fast growing and it's aggressive. And they say that normally in younger people that it is going to be a higher grade like that. So I didn't know staging wise yet what I was, but after they called me that day and told me that it was triple negative, I, of course, researched some stuff. They had told me not to, but I did. And Google is never a good thing. Google is not going to tell you what you want to hear. But they had scheduled me for the very next day. I went and got a breast MRI. And then after that, I had like an off day. I guess I call it Thursday, where I didn't have anything. I had gotten set up to meet with my surgeon and my oncologist on that Friday. And I remember going and meeting with my surgeon for the first time, and she was the first one who, kind of gave me some. I was asking anybody I could, like, what stage do you think I'm at? Like, do you think I'm going to be treatable? Like, I was just grasping at anything anybody could give me. Like, they didn't have the information, but I just wanted to know something. And based off of my MRI results, she told me, she didn't think it had spread, is what she said. But I went just like an hour later and seen my oncologist, and I love him. He's been amazing, amazing. I'm so glad that I was able to get in with him. My mom works for CCI, which is Clearview Cancer Institute here in Huntsville, and she was able to get in touch with a coworker of hers, and they kind of pulled some strings and got me in with him. And I had heard really good things about him, that he was the best. And um, I was able to get in with him. And Lee and my mom went with me for that one. And we were sitting there in the room. And of course, he examined you and everything and looks over the MRI results. And I asked him, I said, do you think it's spread? And all he said, I'm cautiously optimistic is what he said. And looking back now, like after I've learned his personality and how he is and stuff, I really do feel like he thought that I was stage 4 based off of everything. I have a very close friend who worked for him, and well, not for him, but she was a transcriber, and she would transcribe his notes occasionally. And she felt like that the same, that he thought I was much further along than what I was. He ordered a PET scan. I went that next Thursday and got my PET scan, and I met with him right after that first PET scan. And when we walked in and he walked in, and the first thing he said was, "It's not spread." Just the relief that I felt when he said that, like Shelby has said, it's just because stage 4 is a lot different than stage 3. And he started to go over, my results with me and what all of this meant. And when he told me I was stage 3C, I had 5 tumors total. So I had the one in my breast, and it was about 8 to 9 centimeters large. And I had 3 in my well, I had 2 in my underarm. I had 1 behind my breast wall, and then I had a tumor that was, like, right up underneath my sternum. Um, and he just kinda started he went into, "Okay, here's our plan. Here's what we're gonna do." He laid out all of what I was gonna do for chemo, the radiation, and then, further on out. And after that, I think that was the best appointment that I had had that far, just because it was like, "Okay, we've got a plan. I am treatable." Even though I was right there at stage 4, it's not stage 4, thank goodness. And, you know, we've got a plan. We know what we're gonna do. We're gonna fight this. After I met with my surgeon on that Friday, that Monday, that very next Monday, I went in and got a port placed for chemo. And then that Thursday, I met with my doctor, had my PET scan and everything. And then that very following Tuesday, I had my first chemo treatment. So from the time they told me it was cancer to the time I had my first treatment, it was 2 weeks. And it was so fast. I mean, it was only 2 weeks, and I'm so thankful, I guess, that everything moved so fast, but it felt like years. I mean, and I know Shelby has said that. It just feels like everything in the world has stopped, and you're just it's like I was on autopilot in a way. Like I was just going through the motions each day. The hardest part, I think, in those 2 weeks was anytime I would see my kids, it would just you just have those thoughts of, "I'm not gonna be here." What if I'm not here for them? And it is so hard in those moments, but I had my first treatment, it was the week of Thanksgiving. I ended up being pretty sick on Thanksgiving Day, so Lee took Ella to go to Thanksgiving with his family. We normally swap each year and go back and forth. My family had already done their Thanksgiving that year. We did it a little earlier. And so I just stayed with my nanny and Poppy and Walker at their house that day. And I ended up doing 16 rounds of chemo, I had a hospital stay, a few hospital trips during chemo. Me and Shelby had some similar experiences during chemo, what we were allergic to and stuff. And then I had a double mastectomy in June, and I recently just finished up radiation. I did 28 rounds of radiation, and I'm still doing Keytruda, like the immunotherapy. And then I'm not sure exactly when, but here soon I'll start a chemo pill called Lynparza. I'll do that for a year. And one thing I guess I forgot to mention, Shelby had mentioned the genetic testing and stuff. They did that with me too, and it turns out that I am BRCA positive. I have the BRCA1 gene. And so my doctors, which I don't know everything, but from what they've told me, like your chances of having breast cancer is like an 86% chance with the BRCA gene. And for some reason, they see that when you have the BRCA gene, majority of the time it's triple negative breast cancer that you have. You're also like at an increased risk for ovarian cancer. I just met with that doctor today, and he had actually told me a few weeks ago that I think it was like a 60 to 80% chance of having ovarian cancer in your lifetime. So I'll be at some point getting either a partial or a full hysterectomy at some point to take care of that risk. But yeah, so that's pretty much where I'm at right now. Just still continuing with the immunotherapy and then gonna be starting a pill. But this, I mean, I've not even made it a year out yet, but this past year, it feels like it's gone by so fast in one way, but also it feels like it's gone by so slow. It feels like 10 years packed in to one almost.
I was going to ask Shelby this, but I kind of know how it went for her. But for you, like, what was some of the things that you did to like help yourself feel normal? I think she kind of mentioned that.
Yeah, to feel normal through it all. I mean, I tried to keep, I guess, as normal of a schedule as I could at home, like especially for my kids. Walker was too young to really know anything, but Ella being 3, I mean, kids are a lot smarter than I think what we give them credit for sometimes. And I just tried to keep everything as normal as I could. I tried when I could feel like it, do stuff around the house or us going to church on the weekends when I could, like just trying to keep her routine and my routine the same because we thrive off of routine at my house. Like I like to have that routine. And I think having that just, it helped all of us. Having my friends to come over and spend time or having my family like there for a while, I didn't want to be alone. Like I wanted to have somebody with me at all times.
Mhm.
And then, just having them come in, they would bring food or just to come and visit with us. It was a good distraction for me, um, to feel some sense of normalcy, like just to take your mind off of it for a few minutes. So that helped.
I just want to say, I think I cried harder listening to your story than I even did my own story on the last episode, because it just like blows my mind how similar, like you said, there's so many similarities. That lady, what she said to you about radiation, that absolutely broke my heart. I want everybody that is possibly listening to this to take this with you, because you've heard by now like what my doctor was telling me and then what this lady told Emma. You literally never know what somebody's going through. And now this lady, I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, but you never know what somebody's going through. They may look perfectly fine and perfectly normal, and one little snarky comment that you say absolutely ruins their day and something that they still talk about months or years later. And a little kindness goes a very long ways. And all she had to do was keep her mouth shut. That was so, when you got to that part of the story, I was literally like sobbing into my dress because it just, it, people are stupid. There's no
Yeah.
nice way to put it. People
No.
suck. So I'll tell my version of Emma's story. Somebody texted me one night and said, "Do you remember Emma?" I'm trying not to say like where she's from, where she went to church, whatever. But we had a lot of mutual friends, and I actually remembered Emma. I used to hang out with her older cousins when we were all teenagers. And at that point, I mean, she's 5 years younger than me. So I was 17. She was like a little kid. So she wasn't really in my circle, but I remembered her. They said, I heard that she has cancer. They don't know what stage it is, whatever. And so I hunted down her phone number. I went through like several people and was like, get me this girl's phone number. She has no idea who I am, but I've got to reach out to her. And so I texted her, and I don't know at that point if you knew what stage it was. Our stories were so similar and it hit so close to home because I remembered how I felt. And like I said, and like she's said, when you're faced with a diagnosis like this, I didn't think about myself. My mind automatically went to my child and my husband and picturing how their life was going to look without me. And that sounds so dramatic, but that's just where I was at. And as soon as I heard about her, I knew that she had two very, very small kids. And that's automatically where my mind went because I knew that that's probably the thought process that she was also having. And so I just felt such a pressing feeling to reach out to her, and I didn't want to bother her, and I didn't want her to be like, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe everybody's talking about this." And so I didn't really know what to do. So I reached out and kind of like probably overstepped a little bit, but was just
No.
like, basically like, I'm here if you need me, because that is something that I remember thinking after my treatments. I would just lay there and think like, Lord, if you can get me through this, I will help anybody that I can that's ever going through a situation like this. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to uphold my promise. And so I reached out, and I remember calling my mom after I talked to you, and I was just like, there's this girl and she just found out she has cancer. It's the same stage, the same type. It was just insane how close it was. And I know she touched on like us having reactions to some of our treatments. Like our stories went together so well, but I wanted to be there for you. It's not that I didn't have anybody there for me, because I did, but I didn't have anybody that had walked the same journey as me. And so I didn't have anybody to ask questions to about side effects or like surgery opinions. I didn't really have anybody that understood the thought process that I had. And so I thought it was awesome and amazing, really, how it all worked out. Almost a year to the day after I was diagnosed was Emma's diagnosis. I mean, like literally, they were both the same month, a year apart. But to have somebody, even though I was a year ahead, so I was on the tail end of mine when she was first starting, but to have somebody that understands and to go through that together, it meant so much to me. And I hated so bad that anybody ever had to go through that. But just to know, because like I've said, the mental side is so hard. But to have somebody that understands your thought process and why you're thinking that way, like that just meant a lot to me.
I've told people before, I'm like, I think that was one of the biggest helps to me through all of this was having Shelby. And I probably got annoying to her at times, just
Oh,
asking
never.
her all the random questions and stuff. But when she reached out to me, it was almost like a weight of like, okay, now I have somebody I can talk to and I can ask all these questions because like you said, I mean, your friends and your family, they're trying their very best to be there for you. And it's a whole, I mean, Stephanie can probably talk about like it's just a different situation whenever you're the loved one looking on at somebody, but being the one going through it, having somebody who's been exactly where you're at and just not feeling alone in it, I guess
Mhm.
is what really helps too is like not that I hate that Shelby had to go through this, but for her to be such a help to me through all of this, and she's always been like positive with me, which I know that there's moments that she has where she's not positive, obviously, we all do that, but she understands the fears, the thoughts, the day in and the day out of everything that you go through. And that, I've tried to help other people when I can because and reach out to them because it's just the community that you have of having somebody gone through the same thing as you like this. It's
Mhm.
just it's amazing, and it that helped me so much.
And with that said, when you have a cancer diagnosis and everybody finds out that you have cancer, people will reach out, which is, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing because I heard from people that I haven't heard from in years. And just a little thinking of you message, some of that happened in the deepest, darkest valleys. And that's just what I needed that day was just a little heart emoji. And I have an aunt that sent me a card and she timed it where she mailed it to me where it was in my mailbox every Thursday after my chemo treatments. And like that was 10 minutes of her time to write a card, stick it in the mail, but that meant so much to me in that. And I know like a lot of people just don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. And we've talked about like trying to be normal. I can tell you what not to do, and that is do not ghost somebody. Don't not talk to them because I had people that I was pretty close to that just stopped communicating altogether. And I think it was just fear for them of saying the wrong thing or just not knowing what to say. But the best advice I can give, like on my end, would have just been, I mean, like I said, just a thinking of you or just a normal conversation meant so much at that point. But I had people, they come out of the woodworks and they'll tell you about their aunt's sister's best friend's husband's grandma that had cancer and she died and this is what happened. And like everybody feels compelled to tell you the story of someone that they know battled breast cancer, but it's not always what you need to hear. I was drawn more to like the positive stories, the people that fought it, they beat it, and they lived years past that. That's what I loved hearing. And I had people that texted me, and one girl specifically, all she said was, "Hey, I heard you have cancer. Is it true?" And I said, "Yes, unfortunately." And her next message to me was, "Is it terminal?" And at that point, I had no clue what stage it was. I didn't know what type it was. And I'm just like, you cannot ask somebody that when I had been diagnosed for one whole day. And I don't know what place she was coming from with that question, but it really hurt. It hurt really bad because what was I supposed to say? What if it was? I mean, how do you answer that? It just, I don't know. Like, there's a fine line there, but asking the right questions and saying the right things at the right time, but not just becoming invisible. That's a lot.
Yeah. And if you don't know anything to say, because a lot of times I could see them being like, I don't even know what to say in this situation.
Mhm.
Maybe just a simple like, I love you, I'm praying for
Mhm.
you, and if you need anything, I'll be here for you. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated, but like Shelby said, just a simple message of like, I love you and you're in my prayers. I'm praying for you. That means a lot because prayers is what has gotten me to where I am today.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm glad that you brought up the don't bring up the ones that the horror stories.
Mhm.
I'm sure they told it to your mom because they told it to me. Well, so and so, that's the cancer they died from. And I want to say thanks, Captain Obvious. We all knew that.
Yep. And
Yeah, I've
Don't
heard
remind
it many times.
don't
I
remind
think
me,
it
please.
I think it's just like, oh, we have something in common to talk
Yeah.
about. And I don't think anybody would come at that other than a place of like love. It's somewhere deep down in there. But I mean, and I did like hearing people's stories about how they reacted to chemo and this, that, and the other. But if it ended in death, I didn't want to know because I wasn't in a place mentally. I didn't want, I was going there enough on my own. I didn't need to
Mhm.
hear, I needed positive stories. And I know you talked about Googling and trying to stay off Google. And that's one thing my oncologist said to me the very first time that I went to him. He said, have you been Googling this? And I said, yeah. And he said, stay off of the internet. And I got to where, which he told me then in that, he said, the stories on there are so outdated. There's new protocols and new treatments in place, and like the stories that you hear are very outdated and it's just old news. And when he said that, it made me feel so much better. And so I got to where if I wanted to Google something, I would Google positive triple negative breast cancer stories, and I found a whole website dedicated to survivors sharing their stories. And these are people that fought it, beat it, and are on the other side. And that is what I would consume because I realized how quickly I would spiral Googling that. And so that helped me a ton too.
Yeah, my doctor told me the same thing. Whenever I first met with him, he told me to stay off Google, and he told me everything that I was going to read on Google was outdated and that there had been so many advances, especially with triple negative breast cancer in the past like 5 years, and that things just haven't been updated yet. And then also, like, I had people, which they meant well when they did this, but like trying to add me to Facebook groups and stuff for triple negative. And I've learned that I have to stay off of them because they're not all positive. When you see a negative story, it just like the other day I seen one and it put me into a state of mind that was like, oh, well, that happened to them, it's going to happen to me. And Lee just had to kind of reason with me. And he was like, Emma, for every bad story that you hear, there's probably, two good stories too. You're just not reading the good ones. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've had to learn for myself, like, okay, I can't be on these. I can't read this stuff. I'm not in a place to where I can do that.
I agree, and I personally joined several of the Facebook groups, and I liked it for knowing what was to come as far as treatments. Like I said, I didn't have a direct contact to talk to about it other than my nurses and doctors. But one day I saw a comment and somebody was talking about how negative it was, and it's just like there's so many sad stories, and somebody left a comment on that post that said The reason why you don't see very many positive stories on here is because once those people beat this cancer, they take themselves out of this group to move on with their life and get back to normal. And when I read that, I was like, okay, this makes so much sense. And I have slowly started taking myself out of those Facebook groups because it's triggering for me sometimes. See a picture with somebody holding that syringe of the red chemo, and I automatically feel nauseous because of how sick that it made me. And so I've started taking myself out, but that was promising, thinking like, they have a good point. Those people did move on and they're not here to post their stories because they're back into their normal life. And well, I say normal. Normal is a very blanket statement. I don't know that my life will ever be what it used to be, but I have a new normal. So I guess that's a good way to put it.
I don't think anything is normal anymore. I mean, I had seen somewhere where it said you almost like after a cancer diagnosis like this, you almost mourn your old life in a way.
Mhm.
Like I feel like a completely different person
Yeah.
than what I was. I mean, it feels like a different life completely.
Yeah, it really does. And I went through a stage where I grieved the life that I thought I was going to have. Like what I had in my mind for my future obviously didn't happen, and it's not ever going to happen the way I had it in mind. But to accept the fact that I did beat it and I'm through it and I'm here, I'm alive. I've got these years with my family that I didn't think I would have, and that's a big accomplishment. So my new normal is even better than the normal that I thought I would have. And you'll get there too, Emma. I know it's still fresh on you, but I know you're probably like, what in the world? But you'll get
No,
there. You'll get
no.
to that point, I promise.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, and not to even sound, I'm not trying to sound dramatic when I say this, but it's the reality of the situation that is if God hadn't helped me to survive this and get through this, I probably wouldn't be here right now. And like to have that to sink in for a second of how, like me and Shelby, I guess, talked about it the other day, like just to be able to be here still after
Mhm.
everything that's happened, it gives you a new, like, appreciation for everything. Like, you enjoy the little things so
Mhm.
much more, like, the little mundane things, like, just being able to clean my house this week and,
Yep.
like, to cook dinner for my family every night. Like, I have little thoughts like that, I'll be cooking dinner, I'm like, "I'm so thankful that I get to sit here and cook a meal for my family and my husband come home from work and us eat together as a family."
Mhm.
Like, it's the little things like that sometimes that just kinda hits you.
It really is. And I know, like, to other people, you feel like you're soaking it in. And to an extent you are. But when you come out of something like this, like she said, being able to cook dinner, that's something we basically were on a first name basis with our DoorDash drivers around here through chemo because I couldn't cook. And my family lives far away. And I mean, my mom came and would help when she could. I had friends that would DoorDash us dinner. But like, to be able to do that this year when I went to spring clean my house, I was able to clean the windows inside and out and climb up on ladders and clean ceiling fans. And I didn't get to do that the last couple years. And that was a huge thing that, like, little things like that, that we take for granted every day. And I try to remember that because I know the further out I get, the less it will seem like a big deal. And I hope that I never forget how important and special those little things are.
So how often are you going to the doctor, Emma? Like, are you still going a lot? Because I think you said you were doing Keytruda, right?
Yes. So right now I still do Keytruda, which is the immunotherapy drug. I do it every 3 weeks. And it's the same thing like chemo was. I go in and they do my port and I see my doctor. I get blood work done every 3 weeks before that Keytruda. Through radiation, I was seeing the doctor weekly for radiation, but now
Mhm.
that's every 3 months. So right now, I'm like every 3 weeks, which is awesome.
Yeah.
because radiation is daily, and
Yeah.
I feel like I have a little bit of freedom back.
So you still like are going where it doesn't feel like you've been gone that long by the time you're coming back.
Yes, so basically like once a month, and I mean it's not as bad as like going through chemo. I don't feel anything with the Keytruda. I don't feel any different. So that's really nice. I just feel like I went in and got a bag of saline and I leave, and it's only 30 minutes. So
How many Keytrudas do you have left?
I honestly don't know. I
Okay.
asked my nurse this week because I had Keytruda on Tuesday, and I asked her, and I want to say I have maybe 4 or 5 left, but for some reason I think it's going to carry into next year. I can't remember exactly.
So let's end on a lighter note. So was there any like little moments that you found joy or laughter in the middle of your cancer journey?
So I think one of my favorite moments was maybe I started to really lose my hair about 3 weeks in to chemo. I think I'd had 3 good treatments. My hair was very long. It was like down to my knees. And so I always wore it up, and it was just easy. I mean, with 2 kids, you can't have your hair down. And I was sitting there in the doctor's office, and I remember touching the top of my head, and I just felt it coming out. I mean, it was just all I had to do was barely touch it, and it was just falling out. And so I had heard from some others that when you take a shower with that much hair and it's falling out like that, it mats up horribly. So, long story short, I made a decision that with Ella being as young as she was, I didn't want to just all of a sudden like show up with no hair and scare her to death. And so with it falling out like that, my dad came over and we kind of had like a shave party um for Ella, and I think it really helped me too to get through that part, because I mean my hair was a big deal to me. And I had her sit in my lap, and my dad took his razors that he cuts his own hair with, and he shaved my head, because it was, I mean, if I had tried to shower with that, it would just been one big huge mat, and it would have been so painful anyways. And so Ella just kind of got up afterwards. It was like, oh well, whatever. Yeah, no big deal to her. So my friends, I said long story short, but this is turning into a long story. Um, my Some of my really close friends had surprised me, um, and made me an appointment with Georgia Hair, and they do wigs for a lot of different reasons, but for cancer patients, and people might have seen them on TikTok and stuff. But they had called and made an appointment for me, got me in with them. And so me and my mom and she's basically like my aunt. Her name's Gina, and Ella. We all took like a little girls trip to Georgia and went and got my wig. And I was wearing it afterwards. We went out and we ate out back, and I had it on, and we were sitting there in the booth, and Ella just kind of looks up at me, and she's got these big eyes, and she's like, "Mommy, your hair came back." And she was just so like, you know, in a child's mind, she didn't know what was going on, but she just thought, "Oh, okay, mommy's got her hair back."
If only it was that easy.
I know. I'm like, yeah. And then I think my other favorite story would be I had like fully lost my hair at this point. Like I was bald, and I had just gotten used to being around the house. Like I wore a cap most of the time because my head would get cold, but I would take it off at home sometimes. And one of Ella's best friends, a little girl her age from church, had come and stayed the night with us. And I got up that morning, it was just me and the kids, and Walker was napping, and I was gonna have to go meet her mom to drop her back off. And I needed to rinse off in the shower really quick, just like a 5 minute, in and out, because it's really quick when you don't have hair. And
Yeah, it
yeah,
is. That's
yeah,
a silver lining.
it is. I was always so jealous of Lee because he would get out of the shower and just towel dry his hair. And so I got to experience that. But I sat them on the couch in the living room, turned on a movie, got him a snack, and I was like, "Don't get up, don't move. Just sit here." And I hopped in the shower, I'm talking like 3 minutes maybe, and I just wrapped the towel around me, and the way our house is, I could peek around the door, like, they couldn't see me, but I could peek at them and just check and make sure that they were behaving. I didn't think anything about it, but, of course, I was just bald, and she had never seen me. Ella's little friend had never seen me without anything on my head, and I just peeked my head around, and she looked at me, and her poor face, when I tell you, I think I scarred the kid. Like, I think she thought I was from a horror movie or something. She she just looked so confused and scared, and she was like, "Emma," she's like, what happened to your hair?" I just I told her mom and I'm like, "I am so sorry." I was like, "Your kid is probably gonna be scarred for life after seeing that."
Oh
Um,
no.
yeah, so that was probably one of my other favorite moments.
I feel bad for laughing, but that is hilarious.
No, I mean, it is funny. I mean, in a way, might be mean, but in a way, I almost hope she remembers it when she gets older. It's like just a funny story to tell. Like, I
Uh-huh.
was scared to do it. I'm like, if your kid has nightmares when she gets home, I'm sorry. Like,
Yes.
it's a very scary sight.
So I have some funny moments too, but I'm waiting to share mine. We have 2 more episodes planned for October, and so mine will come later because I have several, and mine also involves the day that I finally shaved my head. So stay tuned for that. Emma, thank you for being so open and vulnerable with us today. Your story is powerful, and we know it's going to touch so many people. Next week, Stephanie and I are going to sit down and answer your most common questions about treatment, recovery, and navigating breast cancer. Thanks for listening.